So today, we are basically going to build an entire operating system for your life. And the instruction manual you sent us for this custom deep dive is, well, it's exactly 10 words long.
Just 10 words. Yeah.
No diagrams, no appendices, just 10 words.
Which is wild because usually, when someone wants to overhaul their productivity or like build a massive new habit, they come to us with a towering 300-page manifesto.
Oh, totally. They expect 12 different frameworks,
Yeah.
a color-coded calendar.
Right. And a supplementary app just to figure out how to navigate a Tuesday. But the source material for today completely shatters that expectation of complexity.
It really does. 10 words total. So we have a title, The Architecture of Accomplishment. And then two short sentences beneath it. Wake up with purpose and go to bed with results. That is the entire text.
That's it.
And I have to admit, my first reaction was, intense skepticism. You handed me two very heavy, ornate bookends, but there are absolutely no books sitting between them. Like, how do we get a comprehensive functional framework out of a philosophical haiku?
I mean, I get that. But the profound lack of words is actually what forces us to look at the structural load of the words that are there.
Okay, structural load. I like that.
Yeah, because in a modern landscape where we are constantly drowning in, information overload, this text isn't giving you a labyrinth of granular life hacks. It's giving you a minimalist, unified blueprint.
Right.
The goal isn't to artificially stretch these 10 words into thin air, but to test their weight. We really need to see if they can actually hold up the messy reality of a daily routine.
Okay, so let's test them. Because I am stuck on that first word of the title, honestly. The architecture of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
Why not the habit of accomplishment or the secret to it? Architecture feels incredibly rigid to me. It feels like something that requires a permit and a zoning board.
Well, deliberate language is everything in a text this short.
Right.
Architecture is never accidental.
That's true.
You don't just, trip over a random pile of lumber in a field and accidentally construct a 3-bedroom home with a wraparound porch.
Right, you don't just oops your way into a house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It requires drafting, mathematical precision, a deliberate foundation. So by framing accomplishment as architecture, the text is making this fundamental argument. Success isn't a stroke of luck. It's not a random event you stumble into if you just happen to be standing in the right place.
It's a structure you have to consciously build.
Yes.
But, okay, let me push back on that construction metaphor for a second. Doesn't that imply I need a hyper-detailed schematic before I even pour my morning coffee?
Not necessarily.
Because if I don't have a massive blueprint, all the heavy lifting I do today is just going to leave me with a scattered pile of bricks in an empty lot, right?
But that scattered pile of bricks is the exact way most people experience their work week.
Oh, wow.
They do a phenomenal amount of heavy lifting, they exhaust themselves, but because there is no cohesive design, nothing structurally sound actually gets built.
Great, they're just moving dirt around.
Exactly. The title establishes the ultimate prerequisite. Before you can have architecture, you must have an architect. You have to sit down and acknowledge the dimensions of what you are trying to build before you ever swing the hammer.
Which is such a good point. If you're listening to this on your commute right now, just think about that for a second. Think about what you actually have to show for yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Not how many hours you sat at your desk or, how many emails you aggressively typed out, but what structural bricks you actually laid. Are you treating your daily tasks as random chores you just have to survive? Or are they deliberate pieces of a larger design?
And that brings us directly to the first practical rule of the text, that morning bookend we talked about. Wake up with purpose.
Okay, let's tap the weight of that concept, because purpose sounds very grand.
It does.
It sounds world-saving and inspirational. But let's be brutally real here. What if I wake up at 6 a.m., my alarm is blaring, and my only immediate goal is desperately needing caffeine before I can formulate a coherent sentence?
Right, the survival mode.
Yeah. How is waking up with purpose any different from just waking up and remembering I have a massive to-do list on the fridge?
Well, a to-do list is just an inventory of tasks. It's the what. A list tells you to answer 10 emails, attend a 2-hour strategy meeting, go to the grocery store.
Right.
You can execute a to-do list flawlessly, cross every single item off, and still feel entirely aimless at the end of the day.
Definitely had those days.
We all have. Purpose, on the other hand, is the internal psychological state.
Yeah.
It is the engine behind those tasks.
But how does that actually work mechanically? I mean, even if my purpose is something abstract like patience or focused execution, How does an attitude act as an architectural foundation? It feels too invisible to be a brick.
Because it isn't the brick itself. It's the cognitive filter that dictates how you lay the brick.
Okay, a cognitive filter.
Yeah, think of waking up with purpose, like a construction foreman's morning site briefing.
Mm-hmm.
The foreman doesn't just hand out tools in total silence.
Mm-hmm.
They set the priority and the mindset for the day.
Right.
If the internal purpose is focused execution, that psychological state actually changes how your brain processes an annoying, non-urgent email at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh, okay. Break that down for me. How does the filter change the reaction?
Well, without that purpose established, you might spend 40 minutes angrily replying to that email, completely letting it derail your morning.
Guilty.
Right, because you just react to the loudest noise. But with that purpose firmly set during the foreman's briefing, your brain flags the email as a distraction from the blueprint. It becomes background noise, and you just ignore it. The purpose dictates your resource allocation.
So it acts as a defensive mechanism, really.
Exactly.
If you wake up reactive, just letting the alarm jar you, instantly scrolling through notifications, letting other people's emergencies dictate your first hour, you are basically walking onto someone else's construction site and picking up their shovel.
That is a perfect way to put it. You have surrendered the blueprint before you even got out of bed. And notice how the text specifically links the word purpose to the exact moment of waking up.
Wake up with purpose.
Right. The transition from sleep to consciousness is the critical juncture. Customary ownership of your intention in that specific vulnerable window secures your internal state before the external world has a chance to breach the perimeter.
Okay, so the morning is established. The foreman has given the briefing. The intention is set. The filter is active.
Mhm.
But then the text does something kind of wild. It skips over the entire day and drops us right at the end with the second excerpt. Go to bed with results.
Yeah, it's a hard pivot.
The energy there is completely different. Purpose feels warm and motivating, but results, that feels aggressively demanding. It feels like a ledger.
It is a ledger.
Yeah.
We are shifting from the internal why of the morning to the external, tangible what of the evening.
Yeah.
Going to bed isn't just about resting your physical body because your muscles are tired. In this framework, going to bed is the moment of absolute accountability.
Did the architecture hold up?
Exactly. Did it hold up?
Let me run with the construction metaphor here, just to see if I grasp the shift. If the morning is the foreman's briefing, the evening is the city inspector showing up with a clipboard to sign off on the day's concrete pour.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
And the inspector does not care if the crew had a great attitude. They don't care if the supplier was late or if everyone sweated a lot and felt super busy.
Well,
They only care if the concrete set correctly and meets the structural code. If it didn't, the warm intentions of the morning don't matter at all. The results are binary, pass or fail.
that captures the tension beautifully.
Yeah.
The inspector measures the reality of the work, not the story behind the work. The author pairs those two specific words, purpose and results, because one without the other is a catastrophic failure of architecture.
How so?
Well, if you only have purpose but no results, you are a philosopher who never builds anything.
Yeah.
You're just daydreaming on an empty lot.
And on the flip side, if you only have results without purpose, you might be highly productive, but you are likely building a structure that brings you no fulfillment whatsoever.
Right. You become a machine executing meaningless tasks, basically building a house you don't even want to live in.
Which is a profound risk in modern work culture, isn't it? We optimize for speed and output without ever asking what the output is structurally supporting.
It's the trap of the to-do list we talked about earlier.
That hits hard. I
Yeah.
know I've had days where I go to bed feeling completely exhausted, like I ran a marathon, putting out fires, sitting on Zoom calls, just moving constantly from one task to the next.
We all have those days.
But if someone handed me a clipboard at night and asked, "What were your concrete results today?" I would honestly struggle to point to a single finished thing.
Because motion isn't always progress.
Exactly. This text is challenging you to differentiate between mere motion and actual structural progress before you give yourself permission to clock out.
Which brings us to the massive, glaring omission in this 10-word operating system,
The middle.
the middle. We've analyzed the morning foundation and the evening audit. We have to talk about the 14 hours of unwritten space between them.
The empty space between the bookends. I mean, if I wake up at 7 a.m. and go to bed at 11 p.m., what is supposed to hold those two moments together? The text says absolutely nothing about the chaos of the midday.
It ignores the 10 a.m. meeting that runs an hour long. It ignores the sudden influx of urgent emails, the afternoon energy slump, the unexpected personal crises.
Right. It glosses over the gritty reality of the human experience completely.
It really does.
So, is the author seriously suggesting that if you just nail the morning intention and rigidly demand the evening outcome, the messy middle will magically take care of itself? Because that feels incredibly naive. The middle of the day is where all the plans fall apart.
It's not naive, though. It is deeply pragmatic. The true brilliance of the text is what it deliberately leaves out.
Wait, really? Deliberately?
Yes. If it tried to dictate a strict minute-by-minute protocol for how to handle a crisis at 2 p.m., it would become that overwhelming, brittle instruction manual we talked about at the beginning.
The 300-page manifesto.
Exactly. It would shatter the moment reality didn't match the plan. By only defining the start and the end, the text implies that actual accomplishment is born entirely out of the tension in that messy middle.
Okay, break that down for me. What do you mean by the tension in the middle?
The real work of this architecture is the act of dragging your abstract morning purpose through the absolute chaos of the day.
Dragging it. I like that visual.
You have to protect it and fight for it in a crucible of constant distractions so you can actually forge it into evening results.
Yeah,
The middle of the day is going to be a disaster. That is a given.
100%.
The framework doesn't try to prevent the disaster. It just gives you anchor points to survive it without losing your direction.
Okay, let's put this to a real stress test. I want to see if this actually works in practice.
Let's do it.
Let's say my morning purpose was focused execution on a massive project proposal. I do the foreman's briefing, my mindset is locked in, I sit down to work. Then at 10:30 a.m., a major client calls in absolute panic because a shipment was delayed. My inbox is exploding. My boss wants an emergency meeting right now.
Total chaos.
The blueprint is effectively on fire. How does this 10-word text keep my architecture from completely collapsing?
Well, when the fire breaks out, the natural human tendency is to abandon the blueprint entirely and just start throwing buckets of water everywhere, right?
Mechanic mode.
You get caught up in the reactivity. You might spend the next 6 hours putting out the fire, and when you finally crawl into bed, your results are simply, well, I survived.
Which happens all the time. That is a standard Tuesday for a lot of people.
All the time. But if you have anchored yourself to this specific framework, those two words, purpose and results, act as a structural load-bearing beam.
Okay.
In the middle of the panic at noon, you are forced to pause and run the filter.
Mm.
My purpose today is focused execution on the proposal. My required result tonight is a finished draft. Does attending this emergency meeting about a delayed shipment lay a brick toward that specific result?
I see where this is going. If the answer is no, you have a hard choice to make.
You have a critical architectural choice.
Huh.
You either realize the meeting is a distraction from your blueprint, and you delegate it, strictly protecting your original plan.
Or you consciously decide that the fire is so big you have to draft a completely new blueprint for the day right then and there.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So you don't just blindly stick to a doomed plan while the building burns, but you also don't just get swept away by the chaos. You actively change the purpose.
Yes.
You say, okay, new foreman's briefing. The purpose is now crisis management. The required result tonight is a stabilized client.
The framework forces you to be intentional about the pivot. You are never allowed to just drift through the chaos on autopilot.
Right.
You are either executing the original architecture or you are deliberately designing a new one in real time. The only thing this text forbids is thoughtless reactive motion.
That completely changes how I view those derailed afternoons. It's not about ignoring the fires. It's about ensuring that even when you are fighting fires, you know exactly what building you are trying to save and what the inspector is going to demand at the end of the shift.
And that mechanism is incredibly regulating for your nervous system.
Oh, I bet.
Decision fatigue is what usually destroys a productive day. When you are lost in the weeds at 3 p.m., overwhelmed by competing priorities, you don't need a complex flowchart to figure out what to do next.
You just look at the two bookends.
Exactly. What was the purpose?
Yeah.
What was the result be? It cuts through the noise and recalibrates your coordinates instantly.
It strips away all the justifications we use to feel productive when we aren't actually doing anything. It really is a complete self-correcting ecosystem. We started this deep dive wondering how 10 words could possibly carry enough weight to govern a daily routine, but I feel like we just unpacked a masterclass in structural discipline.
The minimalism is the genius of it. It scales to any situation, whether you are managing a corporate merger or just trying to get your garage cleaned out over the weekend because it relies on fundamental psychological anchors rather than rigid scheduling tactics.
So let's lock in the core takeaways for you listening, because this is something you can literally apply the second you wake up tomorrow morning.
Definitely.
The architecture of accomplishment demands that you stop treating success as a happy accident. You have to step up and be the architect.
Step one.
Right. Step one, anchor your morning. Wake up with purpose. Give yourself the foreman's briefing to install the cognitive filter that will protect your focus from the inevitable noise.
And step two is surviving the messy middle by dragging that intention through the chaos. When the fires start, use the bookends to decide whether to protect the blueprint or consciously pivot to a new one.
And step three, the evening audit. Go to bed demanding results. Make sure the city inspector can sign off on tangible structural bricks that were laid that day, not just the exhaustion you feel.
Right.
Don't let yourself off the hook just because you were busy.
It bridges the massive gap between the abstract desire to do well and the hard physical reality of getting things done.
It absolutely does. In an industry that is constantly trying to sell us companion apps, subscriptions, and endlessly complex productivity hacks, this two-step framework is a powerful, brutally honest shortcut.
It really is.
It forces you to stay well-informed about your own actual progress rather than hiding behind the illusion of motion.
I want to leave our listener with one final complication to mull over, building on that stress test we did earlier.
Okay, let's hear it.
We talk about dragging purpose toward results, or actively pivoting when the building is on fire. But what happens when you don't pivot consciously?
Uh-oh.
Right? What happens when the results you go to bed with completely contradict the purpose you woke up with?
Wow.
Does that mean your day was an outright failure? Or did you just inadvertently build a completely different kind of architecture than you originally drafted?
That is a haunting thought to end on. You might have drawn a blueprint for a quiet residential home, but your results prove you actually spent all day pouring concrete for a loud highway.
Exactly.
It forces you to look at the reality of your actions over the comfort of your intentions. We started with what looked like an empty shelf between two bookends, but I think we definitely found the entire library today. Until next time, keep a very close eye on your blueprints.